My name is Audrey, and I will be looking at the relationship between language and thought for cognition. So, before I get started on looking at the articles that I found, I wanted to go through a few key terms that relate to the idea of language and thought and how they're related to each other. The first is linguistic relativity, and this is when people who speak different languages inevitably think differently. And I got this definition from the textbook. And also the second term is the Whorfian hypothesis. Benjamin Whorf argues that the language you speak forces you into certain modes of thought. So language shapes the way you think. I also got that from the textbook. The articles that I am looking at are the Whorfian hypothesis and numerical cognition. Is 24 processed in the same way as 4 and 20? And this kind of deals with the approach that's more language influences thought, whereas the second article, acquisition of categorical color perception, a perceptual learning approach to the linguistic relativity hypothesis, is focused more on thought influencing language. So the first article is looking for the difference in answers from French-speaking participants and Dutch-speaking participants. For the number 24, French-speaking individuals organize these numbers as 20 and 4, whereas Dutch individuals organize their numbers as 4 and 20. So a big question to keep in mind for this is, does the way in which the language is spoken influence what a person thinks? A hypothesis for this article is there will be a larger effect for the verbal than for the Arabic or the written input of these languages. The methods used for this article consist of participants were asked to pronounce as fast as possible the solutions of a simple addition that consisted of 2-digit numbers and a 1-digit number. So this would look something like 20 plus 4 equals what? Half of the respondents responded in the Arabic or written format, and half responded in the verbal format. An independent variable for this is the order the numbers were given in. So half of the participants got numbers that were ordered in 20 plus 4, and the other half got 40 plus 20. And this was random. Another independent variable was the response format. As I mentioned before, half of the respondents got the Arabic format and half got the verbal format. The dependent variable in this particular study was the reaction time, or how fast could the participants answer the question. So questions would appear on screen for 50 milliseconds, followed by a blank page. And this makes it so that people can't dwell on their answers. So they have to answer very quickly. The results of the study are that French-speaking subjects experienced an advantage of 114 milliseconds when the problems were presented in the T and U order, or 20 plus 4, than when they were presented in the U and T order, or 4 and 20. In contrast to this, the Dutch-speaking subjects only showed a 74 millisecond advantage for the T and U, or the 20 plus 4 order, when the problems were presented in Arabic form. As you can see on this table, this is the 20 and 4. This would be the 4 and 20. So in the Arabic form, it was faster on all accounts. And same with this for both the French and Dutch. And the differences were higher for the French-speaking individuals. In the discussion section, the authors find that in a language that saves the order of the tens and the units in the number names, such as the French, there was a pronounced advantage when the 2-digit number preceded the single-digit number. So that would be if it was 20 plus 4, they were able to answer it much quicker. This particular idea strengthens the concept that language influences thought, in that this language is organized in a way that had an influence on the way a person thinks. They could answer faster because they were thinking about the numbers in the same way that they were thinking about their language. So language influenced thought, and this study strengthens that idea. For the second article, the authors were looking at whether learning new color categories can lead to new perceptions of color. So there were specific color categories, which were the blue hues and green hues. And a question for this is, does the way in which people think influence the use of language? The hypothesis for this article is that training of different color categories will lead to more accurate identifications within color categories. So that's the small little changes within the blue hues and green hues. For this, participants were randomly assigned to 4 groups, 2 experimental groups and 2 control groups. Those assigned to the 2 experimental groups performed categorization training in 3 daily sessions only in their assigned training region. So if they were assigned to blue, then they only trained in blue. If they were assigned to green, they were only trained in green. And then there were the 2 controls. The independent variable for this is the training of color category recognition. So either in the blue, the green, or no training. The dependent variable was the accuracy of category identification. The results of this study show that the comparison of the training groups with the controls indicate that region-specific overall improvements occurred. So the blue hue group were able to identify more of the blue hues within the blue group, and green as well with the green were able to identify more. These differences between the training group and controls were significant for both blue as the main effect and green as the main effect. And you can see here that this is the start, or this is within categories, and this is across categories for the blue judgment. And you can see that the within category was a little bit less than the across category. It's kind of the same with the ba and pa, the categorical versus continuous. And the green group could not distinguish across category in the blue judgment. However, it was the different effect in the green judgment. The greens were better at both the within and across categories. And the control group, so the between subject that didn't get any training, stayed the same in the middle. This study found that it appears that participants can unlearn the effect of pre-existing categories while learning the novel categories. And this suggests that what a participant is focusing on can influence how they perceive the same information. So focusing thoughts on a particular thing has an influence on language used to describe those things, and this was seen in the accuracy of color identification. So thought influences language. To conclude, linguistic relativity has 2 ideas that thought can influence language, or language can influence thought. And these 2 articles, although they were proving the different ideas of it, they were both looking at the relationship between language and thought and how they interact with each other. Thank you. And here are my references.